A Bumpy Start. Thomas the Tank Engine likes working on Sir Topham Hatt's railway. He is proud of his blue paint, his number 1, and running his branch line with his faithful coaches Annie and Clarence. But a long time ago, Thomas wasn't painted blue, and he wasn't number 1. He worked in the station yard, shunting trains for the bigger engines. There were lots of coaches and trucks. Thomas had a lot to learn. Luckily, his friend Albert helped to keep the yard tidy and to teach Thomas how to be a really useful engine.
Take care with those trucks, Thomas. Don't take too many at once. And don't forget to bump them if they cause trouble.
One morning, Sir Topham Hatt arrived at Knapford Yards. He had important news.
The trains are becoming longer and heavier, he boomed. So 2 new engines are coming to help. Thomas and Albert, make sure their trains are ready. We don't want them to be late on their first day.
Yes, sir, they said. They could hardly wait to meet the new engines. Later that morning, the new engines arrived. They both had blue paint and big wheels. They looked very strong. Thomas and Albert were impressed. Hello, I'm Thomas.
And I'm Albert. What are your names?
I am Alexander, said the first engine.
And I'm Clarence, said the second. And we don't have time to talk to little tank engines.
Thomas and Albert were surprised.
There's no need to be rude.
We wouldn't need to be rude if you small engines do as you're told, puffed Alexander. Now fetch my coaches.
And fetch my trucks, huffed Clarence.
The new engines steamed snootily away. Steaming pistons! What rude engines, wheezed Thomas.
Take no notice, said Albert wisely. They'll learn their lesson.
But Thomas was too cross to listen. The 2 big engines waited impatiently at Knapford Station. Then they heard 2 whistles in the distance. Thomas and Albert had finally arrived with their trains. Albert shunted the coaches smoothly behind Alexander. But Thomas wasn't paying attention. He went too fast and bashed the trucks into Clarence.
Ah! Watch what you're doing!
Sorry, called Thomas. Silly little engine, fumed Alexander. He and Clarence snorted away. Thomas and Albert went back to the shunting yard. Thomas was still cross, and the trucks were being troublesome. Silly Thomas, they giggled.
That's enough teasing. Now come along, please.
Albert gave them a biff and a bash, and the trucks weren't troublesome anymore. When Thomas saw this, he had an idea. Albert said to bump the trucks to make them behave, he puffed to himself. So if I bump Alexander and Clarence, they'll behave as well. Then they'll stop being rude. So whenever Thomas had to fetch their trains, he would biff the coaches into Alexander and bash the trucks into Clarence. Thomas thought he was very clever. However, his plan did not work at all. The 2 engines didn't like being bumped about. One evening, they complained to the other big engines.
That little Thomas is a bother. He keeps bumping and bashing our trains. He needs to be taught a lesson.
Don't be cross with Thomas, said Edward. He still has a lot to learn. Clarence wheezed loudly.
Don't tell us what to do. You just stay in the shed all day. You can't even puff properly.
Edward was speechless.
Thomas is as bad as a troublesome truck,
hissed Alexander. No, he's not, wheezed Clara. Thomas can be fussy, but he isn't nasty, added Gordon. Alexander and Clarence were still cross. They were determined to teach Thomas a lesson. Then a naughty idea flew into Clarence's funnel. The next morning, Albert had to take a passenger train. Thomas was all alone at the shunting yard, but he worked hard to keep the sidings tidy. Later, Clarence chuffed quietly into the yard. He could see Thomas at the other end of a very long train. Thomas buffered up to push the train to the other track. Now I'll teach him a lesson. He rushed forward and gave the trucks a very hard bump. Ow! Ooh, hey! Ouch! The trucks bashed into Thomas. They knocked his driver and fireman off the footplate. Cinders and ashes, cried Thomas. The heavy trucks pushed him out of the shunting yard. But with no one to apply his brakes, Thomas couldn't stop. Meanwhile, Henry was puffing happily along with his passengers. Then he saw Thomas racing towards him. Help! He whistled. The signalman noticed and changed the points just in time. Henry screeched to a halt. Wobbling wheels, he wailed. Thomas flew by Tidmouth sheds. Edward was shocked to see him puffing that fast. Thomas rushed around the bend and into a siding. He shut his eyes. At the shunting yards, Clarence was still waiting for Thomas when the yard manager arrived. Thomas has run off the rails. You must bring the breakdown crane to rescue him. Clarence was surprised. He hadn't expected his trick to go this far. When he arrived with the breakdown train, Clarence stared at the mess. There were lots of goods on the ground. Some trucks were damaged, and Thomas's buffers were badly broken. Then Albert arrived with Sir Topham Hatt. He was very angry.
What a disaster! Thomas, how did this happen?
Thomas let off steam sadly. The trucks pushed me, sir. I tried to stop them, but they were too heavy.
Oh, Thomas, sighed Albert, I told you before not to take too many trucks at once.
Thomas felt terrible. I'm sorry, Albert. I'm sorry, sir.
I should think so, boomed Sir Topham Hatt. Now you will have to go to the works to be mended, and Albert will do your work instead. I hope this will teach you to be careful with trucks.
After Thomas was secured onto the flatbed, Clarence puffed away. Thomas felt very sad, and so did Clarence. He wanted to tell Sir Topham Hatt about his trick, but decided not to. Following Thomas's incident, Albert had more work to do in the yards. Edward came out of the shed to help. Albert was grateful, and Edward was happy to puff once again. But Thomas was left all alone at the works. He hoped he would be repaired quickly, so he could be really useful once again.